So what are you going to tell us, tough guy? Said, my usual. Zero, nothing.
Ladies and gentlemen, what's going on? Welcome back to the Pop Culture Podcast. I hope you're having a great week. I got bit by a dog this week, and I put a photo up on Instagram because I thought it was. I mean, it's a funny story that you get bit by a dog, but the reactions to a story about dog bites were. It's a controversial subject, I've realised. I didn't realise how much passion there was around the subject. It was good to see how much people cared. It was interesting to see how much less people cared when they found out I got bit by a dog because I was riding a skateboard. They go, man, you're 36. Like, your skateboard days should be behind you. Maybe that's just the universe saying it's time to walk or it's time to drive your car. It was a beautiful day. We had a couple of beautiful days here this week. And so I didn't want to just get in the car and drive to where I was going because everything's pretty close to us here, really. I mean, you don't really need a car. If I'm completely honest, you don't really need a car to get where we're going. I was going to Pico, which is our local cafe, and it's probably 2K. And there's a nice coastal path that goes along the beach. The water was still, the sun was shining, there was no wind. I thought I'm gonna work on my tan. I mean, I had the shirt on, which should maintain a little more respect. I think the temptation was there. I often run with the shirt off, which is a bold move in the town that I live in, because you can't be doing obnoxious things like that. In Melbourne or a big city, it's easier because not as many people know who you are. There's not as much judgment. Here, it is guaranteed that I'm going to see my friend or my friend's wife or both of them together, and they're going to go, Tyson, just put a shirt on, man. Everyone knows you. But the truth is, you work hard at the gym so you can have your shirt off. That's not really why. I've never been ashamed to get the shirt off, though. I don't know what. I've got a friend of mine who's in fantastic shape and he doesn't really like getting the shirt off. For me, any opportunity I can. That's why I found it hard to be a school teacher sometimes, because on the nice days I had to wear a shirt and tie, and I thought, it'd be so much better if it wasn't weird. There's always a couple of weirdos that make it weird to do shirts off in front of children, and so I guess thanks to that particular crew, the option of being a shirt off teacher is looked down upon. It's funny the things that are looked down upon. I remember that school. I went in and I had like an induction day. It was the first day at the school, and they had a photo of me. My sister-in-law had put together this photo of me, and it was. I don't know where the photo was, but I was sitting there and they had my photo up on the board. It had my name, and the photo had a lot of attention paid to it. My teeth were obnoxiously white. My wrinkles had been ironed out. I looked like a Barbie doll. And even one of the teachers said to me, dude, what's going on in this photo? I said, look, I just want you to know that this was edited by my sister-in-law, and I can see where she sees my biggest areas of weakness are, and it happens to be the colour of my teeth and the severity of my wrinkles. So they were ironed out. It's funny what people notice. I always respect a bloke if I see him running with his shirt off, especially if he's in good shape. To be honest though, like even if I see a bloke and he's not in that good shape, if he's got his shirt off and running with confidence, I think that's what I just like confidence. I just like confidence, whether you got man boobs or whether you got a good body. If you're rocking whatever it is that you've got with confidence, I go, you know what, a little hat tip to you. But I had my shirt on the skateboard the other day. I heard this dog barking. I heard him growling before I got to where the serious attack took place. It was I think it was a staffy. It looked like a young staffy, so it wasn't an adult dog bite. It was like he wasn't a 6-week-old, so he didn't just have those little pin teeth. He knew what he was doing, but he just didn't have the strength to back it up, I think. Because the truth is, you'd rather get bitten by a baby than an adult in any industry. And I think it's fair to say that the older a particular person gets, the stronger their bite gets. I've noticed now my 3-year-old boy has quite a strong bite. Do you know, this is a true story. I was laying, my kid went through a little phase of biting, and I was laying in my lounge room once. My boy must have been 9 months, maybe let's call it a year, because he knew what he was doing, but I don't think he knew the power of his bite just yet. And I was laying on the floor of my lounge room and I was just playing with my little boy. He was crawling around. And all of a sudden, like, he bit me on the hand a little bit. And then he was just climbing over me a little bit. Next thing I know, I'm not kidding, through my pants, he got right on the end of... I'm just trying to think of the nicest way to say. You know what I'm trying to say. He got me right on the end of my little knob. It seems unnecessary to go into too much detail about the size of it. I don't know why I framed that with little, but I mean a lot of us know each other, and so maybe that's not huge news to any of you. But legitimately, I'm not just saying this for the purpose of the story. It bled. It was bleeding. I had to go and show my wife, and she's like, "Oh, you can't afford to lose any more off that." I was like, "Hey, come on now, that's such a cheap shot. You can't be. I'm literally in one of the most vulnerable positions I could ever be. I've just been bitten on the knob by my 1-year-old boy, and you've taken this moment not to comfort me, but to remind me of the fact that, like, every little bit of it's precious." And yeah, it's a. I haven't been bitten much in my life, so it was a bit of a shock to the system. But yeah, the post I put up, let me see if I can show you, because I took a couple of photos, because my little boy was so concerned about, like, despite the fact that it was just 2 years ago that he did bite me on the end of the knob, he was very concerned about what was happening. As you can see there, like, it's not an overly severe bite, but people freak out. People are saying, get antibiotics, make sure you sanitize it, get a tetanus. And I think it all seems like really good advice. But is tetanus still a thing? I've never met someone who's had tetanus. I'm not 100% sure. I'm sorry to take you down this rabbit hole again, because I've already developed the reputation as an anti-vaxxer over the last couple of years. But I mean, the prophecies have come true, because now I'm starting to question everything. So I just rinsed it under some water, and I used betadine, which is something I hadn't used since probably grade 2. The smell of it reminds me of lunch orders, which is funny. Do you ever have that moment where you're in a certain situation, you'll smell something or hear something or taste something, and it just takes you straight back? A lot of the time, like jasmine flowers reminds me of walking down my driveway when I was about 4 years old. I smell that. It takes me straight back to that driveway. Yeah, betadine takes me back to Grey Street Primary School. With Sebastian, who just scraped his knee again, and they had to get some antiseptic on it. And yeah, it was a weird feeling. I started to get sentimental about the smell a little bit, but I mean, it seems, I don't want to jinx it, but it seems okay. It's funny, I got a phone call from my lovely mum the next day saying, "Tyson," she's called me 4 times asking how the dog bite's going, and it's making me more nervous. I was very relaxed about the fact I got bitten by a dog. It was a construction worker's dog. The construction worker was, I actually don't know what the trade he was doing. He looked like he might have been painting or whatever. And I was skating along and he goes, "Mate, did that dog just bite you?" And it's like when Jesse gives me a hard time about this, because I think sometimes I misread the appropriate way to respond in a different situation. Like I was at a petrol station one day and I had my car parked and I was sitting there and a guy drove in behind me and just banged into the back of my car. And I mean, it didn't bother me that much because it wasn't that good a car. And he got out, he's like, "Dude, I'm so sorry." I go, "Mate, if you knew how little I cared, you wouldn't apologize so much." He's like, "Do you want my details?" And I said, not really, let's just see what happens. And he was looking at me like I was an idiot. And I think that was the appropriate response. I got home and told my wife, and she's like, "Dude, like, who doesn't know that the appropriate way to respond to this situation is just to get the details just in case." I think it's in my family a little bit. My legend of an uncle Mark, he's coming to have a sleepover here in a couple of months. Poor bugger borrowed my car and someone just rammed into the back of the car one day. And I think this is where I got it from. The person said, "Do you accept cash?" And he goes, "Hell yeah, I do." And the car was worth $100. I think the guy gave him $500, so we got out on top. But I remember people looking at me going, "Wait, so you just brush it off? You just get paid cash for the accident?" Okay, it's actually a decent business idea. I don't know. It's funny the way people operate. I feel like some people are so on the ball with day-to-day things. Like the amount of... I think one thing that happens in our household is admin's a really big stress for me. It can take me all day to build up the motivation to call to make a booking for accommodation or to... Paperwork is just something I don't do. I used to hear about Bill Burr, who had like 5 different phone plans in 5 different countries all around the world whenever we'd go out and tour for comedy. And my wife would hear that and she'd go, that's so expensive. I go, no, it makes sense, because imagine trying to call Spain. Like, I've tried to call Optus here in Australia and tell them about the problem that I'm having with my phone plan, and that's an absolute nightmare. The idea of trying to explain that same problem to a person but they're speaking Spanish is even more difficult, I reckon. And so I stand with people like Bill Burr in that industry, because people don't take into consideration stress. When you're weighing up like money, I reckon not enough people go, okay, it's this much money, but it's this much stress. They just go, all right, how much money is it? But I feel like asking how much money is something costs, it shortchanges yourself, because then all of a sudden, you might save a few $100, but that few $100 is going to cost you, I don't know, 2 months of life just on stress levels alone. So I say, hey, pay the money. You need a balance, though, I think. That's why I'm glad I've got Jessie, because Jessie's the kind of person that, I say stuff to money in all situations. She'll say, Tyson, honestly, you're not Kim Kardashian. There's a limited supply of it. You need to be a little bit smart. And I think I was going to say, I think that's why we get on. But the truth is, it sounds more like a thing that you would clash on. I don't know. I don't 100% understand what's going on. But anyway, that was my week. That was a little treacherous thing. Before it even happened, I remember I was driving. My hair's stressing me out a little bit. I thought it looked better, and then I sat down and I realized this is what I'm working with. I honestly walked from... The microphone's not doing any justice. Look at this. You see, I put this on this morning. I thought this is a fantastic look for the podcast, and then now all I can see is the fact my hair's not sitting right. That's another thing I'm honestly not like a very good judge of is how good hair looks. Or selfies. I don't know if you ever have this, I'll often look at a photo of myself and I go, that's a good photo, and I'll show my wife and she go, are you kidding? And then she'll show me a photo that she thinks I look good, and I go, I don't understand how anyone can... It's very interesting the perspective that people have. It's been interesting this week to hear the perspective of, did you hear Jetstar launched a new ad campaign, Flying with Pride? There seems to be endless amounts of this. I don't really understand why it's such a huge focus point. I've never, when you go to a cafe and it says gay people are welcome here, or we accept all genders or whatever. I feel as though the cafes now that don't accept them should have to have the stickers on, because I think it's fair to say the general consensus is, regardless of your color, sexuality, whatever it is that you're working with, you're fairly welcome into every single place. I've never been to a bar or to a cafe and they say, hey, before you come in, just a quick one, are you a gay man? In fairness, it's probably, I think they just assume it, like based on shirts like this. They see me and they go, he's a gay man. Like, so, I mean, my point still stands. They let me in. I'm still allowed to go in, get that long black and a coffee if they have time for it. That's a cheap joke, but it makes me laugh. Anyway, Jetstar, they've come out with their Flying with Pride. They had a trans woman at the face of it, and they said, hey, we want to stand with the LGBTQ plus community. But I feel as though there's a lot of, they call that virtue signaling, isn't it? It's like where you say the right thing, but you're not necessarily doing the right thing. Like you might say, okay, it's a nice gesture. But when everyone starts doing something, it's no longer just a nice gesture. It's just the norm, isn't it? And it'd be nice to see, rather than just have a trans man be the face of the ad, like if they really believe it, I reckon they should get every male pilot to dress up as a trans woman for the month of January, and then that would prove it, I think. Because I know people would have an issue with that. People would go, I don't want no trans woman flying my plane. Do you know? For me though, I personally, I'd be happy to have a trans woman flying the plane. It wouldn't bother me at all. My only issue would be is if it was a real woman flying the plane. That's where I've seen you guys drive. It's a nightmare. I remember my wife was in Ballarat one year and I was in the car with her. I have no idea why I let her drive. It makes no sense to me. But for whatever reason, I let her drive. And it must have been a once off. And we were approaching this roundabout. And I could see from about 400 meters away that there was a car traveling towards the roundabout from the other side it was going to cause a problem. He was going fast. He didn't appear to be watching. So I said to Jessie, babe, watch out, there's a car coming. She goes, don't you, what, you think women can't drive? I said, well, I do think that, but it's the wrong time to discuss it because I want you to focus on this because I know you shouldn't be trying to talk and drive. And so we got to the roundabout. I said, hey, babe, just watch because he's going to come through. She goes, I know. But so we entered the roundabout, and obviously the guy T-boned us, smashed into the front of the bonnet. And Jessie goes, babe, I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened. And I said, well, God knows what happened. He made you a woman. And and that's why, I think that's why it says in the Old Testament that men should drive. I'm pretty sure. But anyway, I say that just to say that that's the reason when I get on a flight, if I see a beautiful woman who's the pilot, I go, I hope she's just there for assistance. Really. Honestly, I feel that way. Unless I see a white man in the cockpit, I start to get a little bit nervous. Any other color, any other gender, I go, when's the next flight? And I've got no problem with black men, Asian men, women. It's for the same reason I like my rappers black. Some people are just better at some jobs. And it's not a racist thing. It's like if you're a betting man, you don't go to a race and you say, okay, it's the 100 meters. Should we bet on the white man or the black man? Because 100% you bet on the black man. I've never seen someone go to an athletics track and see a white guy race a black guy, and on the start line, them say, oh, this should be a good race. Because it's not. And it's true. People get angry at you when you say that. But stats are like, let's go through the record book. Usain Bolt, 100-meter record. Usain Bolt, 200-meter record. Wayne Vanderkerk, 400-meter record. South African dude, probably the lightest of them all, but he's an African. 800 meters, David Rudisha. 1,500 meters, Hisham Al Garouj, Moroccan. 5,000 meters, Joshua Cheptegei. 10,000 meters, Joshua Cheptegei. Marathon, Kiptum. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes stereotypes are there for a reason. It's the reason I won't stand next to a black man at a urinal, not because I don't like him or trust him, but because I just don't need that image, especially when I've got a son who's, trying to deduct what I do have. The women's are the same. Marion Jones got done. Who's the 100-meter record holder? Who is the 100-meter record holder? I'm blanking on it. That's embarrassing that I've forgotten that. But once again, who cares about women's sports? No, it's kind of a joke. That's a big joke. It's actually a big joke. I'm only joking. I coach a lot of awesome women. It's just, I hope you don't take me seriously with that joke. All right. There's always some truth behind a joke, though. Is what people say. No, I'm taking the piss. All right. It's just you can't be too careful. People don't like jokes these days. Because even when you justify something like that, people go, no, but you shouldn't have said it. But I go, but was it funny? And they go, not really. I think that's why I like people like Elon Musk. Did you see? I don't even know where it was that he was speaking the other day, but that interview where I don't know what the interviewer's name was, but he had like an energy that I wasn't a big fan of. He had this energy, came to the interview, and it was almost patronizing. He was speaking down to Elon Musk. And it's really interesting to see a bloke who's a journalist and like undoubtedly, like he's obviously done something right to be in a situation where he's getting to ask Elon questions. And the truth is, it sounded as though they were friends or they'd been friends for a long time. But this guy was talking down to him and he was asking, hey, because, and this is what does my head in. It's the virtue signaling. So you've got, and Elon nailed it. He said, you've got some people who say the right things while doing evil. And you've got other people who appear to say the wrong things while doing good. And the person who says the wrong things but does the good is looked at by the virtue signalers as though they're the evil one. And it's just a weird situation to find yourself in where the virtue signals, like the big... In what world, like at what time did corporations become like the moral arbiters of what can be said and what can't be said? I've realized, I said this to a mate the other day, I'm like, I just want to say what I find funny. If something's funny to me, I just say it. And he goes, yeah, but you have to be careful in Melbourne because if you say jokes that aren't funny in Melbourne, you're not going to get gigs. And this is the exact problem. I reckon you've got to... I want to... Here's my new goal. I want the biggest rooms in Melbourne to question whether or not I'm an appropriate choice for their room based on the fact that they disagree with something I say. Because the best comedians in the world are all the ones that say the things that people are afraid to say. And that's beautiful. I love that. And so maybe you can keep me accountable on that. If I'm up there and I'm not saying the things that I'm saying to you here on stage, I'm being a pussy. And so challenge me on that. But the beauty is, or the challenge is, you've got two streams of comedian. You've got a comedian and they're going to say the right things because they want to get like that mainstream television program like the Jimmy Kimmel or the Letterman style show, or they might even resort to something, far, far lower on the spectrum like The View. And as a result, you have to think the right things. You have to say the right things. You can't say anything positive about Trump. But it's a dishonest conversation either way, isn't it? Like, if you're going to be playing that particular game, you're still not being truthful. You're just saying what you're allowed to say. And I've got no interest in that. I like people who are a little bit of a mixed bag. Like, they'll say something, you go, I agree with that. And then they say something else, and you're like, wait, what the heck? That doesn't fit into the category of what you're supposed to say. And man, Melbourne comedy, like this is how I would explain it. 99% of the people in Melbourne comedy are absolute legends. And then I would say it's probably less than 1% who they might run a room. And as a result of running a room, like a certain amount of power comes with that. And so if you're running a room, it could be a really good room, it could be a really bad room, but you're the dictator essentially over what kind of comedian you're allowing in there. And there's a little bit of a power trip that comes with that. And so I think my message to that kind of person who's going to allow certain kind of comedy is like, that's where I want to get my Elon Musk up and just go, fuck, man, piss off. Like, don't be you run a comedy room, you pussy. And Jessie said to me the other day, she's like, Melbourne, it is actually a very small, as much as I love it, I'm definitely not, I don't mean to sound like I'm slandering any particular, even as I say this, I don't have a particular person in mind. I just have the stereotype of what Melbourne comedy is. And it's like that woke comedy scene. And if you're woken up, like, anyway, this is what I've been trying to wrap my head around. You can go one particular route and you end up on The Project here in Australia, which is a low-rating shit TV show. But for whatever reason, because it's on TV and we're still like leaving that world of, okay, TV's where the big power is to, okay, like independent creators is actually where the real numbers are. There's still a part of our brain that goes, oh, it must be good, he's on TV. But the TV show is shit. It's a woke organisation that have things like NAM instead of Melbourne as the name of the city when they're doing a guest interview. And that's the kind of people I don't want to go down that route because that's not funny. I've never really seen a comedian on a platform like that and go, they're quite funny, because they're constantly biting their tongue. And my personal favourite kind of comedians are the one who don't bite their tongue. They've just got a controversial topic and they say it, even though that less than 1% who has the power to give them a gig or not will be mad at them and might not give them a gig. If you get to a certain point, if you get to a particular point in your comedy, I mean, you've got a little bit more freedom. And even if you get banned here in Melbourne, who gives a shit? Like, it's a big world. I remember coming back from London to Melbourne and being like, Melbourne is a tiny little city. It tripped me out. I was like, oh, this is a country town. But when you're in it, it feels like the biggest thing, doesn't it? And so you think, okay, I don't want to stuff up here. This is why I love Matt Rife at the moment. Like, he's a gorgeous comedian who also is funny. I'm so inspired by these kind of people who they say the things that mainstream media don't want you to say. It just gets me excited. Anyway, I actually haven't watched a lot of Matt Rife, but just since I heard him on Jordan Peterson's podcast the other day, I go, you know what? I like this guy. Anyone who's got the balls to say something that they find funny and can do it, and he's quick, he's funny. It's just it's interesting. When you get big enough, a lot of the time I feel as though you only hear the negative outlook on a particular person. But Matt Rife is, sure, there's certain people who are out there talking bad about him, but man, I think he sold 600,000 tickets in 48 minutes. I mean, so if If you don't like him, that's fine. But he doesn't give a shit. Well, he shouldn't, because he's funny and he's gorgeous and he's muscly, and he's selling 600,000 tickets in 48 minutes. And I'm not 100% sure how we got to this point in the podcast, but here we are. Wait, let me take a little pivot. I caught up with a friend a couple of weeks ago. Very weird. I give off an interesting vibe to people. I'm quite interested. I'm very interested in health. I was talking to this guy, and as we're about to leave his house, so we're there with his wife, his 2 kids, and himself. And before we left, he said, "Here, I'll roll you a couple of joints." And I said, like, what is it? People are always giving me mushrooms and joints, and man, it's, I appreciate it. I don't know what vibe I'm giving off, but it's a strong enough vibe that suggests I smoke weed. Obviously, I turned him down. Not interested in that kind of behavior. I think it's still illegal here in Australia as well, technically, which is, it's something like, it's frowned upon, isn't it now? It's not necessarily illegal because everyone at comedy smokes it. It's actually a booming business in the world of comedy, I've realised. I mean, you don't have to spend long in the comedy scene to realise how many people smoke it to make you realise, maybe it's not a good idea. All these drug-fucked people getting up, trying to tell jokes, smoking joints. You go, okay, not everyone functions as well as Joe Rogan when they smoke weed. Anyway, what else? I had a few things written down here. The Killing of a Sacred Deer is the movie that I watched last night. It's I'm only halfway through it, but man, I love it. That's why I was telling you that. So this bloke who offered me the joints, he is like a real movie buff, and he gave me like 20 of his favorite movies of all time, and this one was on the list, and I was like, I'll check this out. Oh, bro, I'm so excited to go back and watch it later. The only reason I put it away is because I knew I was going to be up early with the kids this morning. I was halfway through. It was 11 o'clock. I thought, all right, I'm going to have to hit pause. But it's one of those ones that's just got me pumped. Very, very strange. If you're looking for a good movie, I like it. I also have a reputation. I might have told you this before. I've got a reputation for recommending movies that people aren't necessarily super into, or that are weird. So, yeah, no, this is a weird movie. Actually, Jessie got home. She was out for dinner with friends last night, and she got home. She goes, I don't think I like this. I can hear it. I'm not interested. I go, hey, rewind it when I'm not home. Watch it from the start, and tell me if you watch it from the start that you don't like it. You will. I'm pretty sure. Anyway, I don't know. I don't really know where I'm going with that story, but I just wanted to tell you that's something that I'm watching. What else? I watched The Taxi Driver a few weeks ago. I'm going through a phase where I'm trying to go through like classic old movies, and also with books a little bit. I'm like a record collector with books. I think I'm a way slower reader than I am purchaser of books. I actually don't read that many hard copy ones. Like I listen to them mostly on Audible now. I think it's just more of a time thing. I don't really, with kids especially, I never really find myself in a position where I'm like, hey, I've got an hour to sit down and read a book. But I'm always in the car, so audiobook seems to work really well. But I reckon I look at books the way record collectors look at records. There's something cool about holding it, something cool about having it on the shelf. And I'm just going through a new phase. I've gone through op shops and trying to find books that I like recently. So this is purely aesthetic. This bookshelf in the background here is one, just so it's not a blank wall that you're looking at. But I've got the camera strategically placed because we've got a bookshelf out in the like the back lounge room. And most of our books are out there. So the bottom shelf here is empty, but I can't be giving off the illusion that I'm only like a 2/3 of a bookshelf kind of man. And so I've got the camera set just above where the rest of the books would be. But truth be told, that's an empty bookshelf down the very bottom there. But the way that I'm going recently, with a couple more Savers visits and a couple of more op shop visits, I'm definitely going to be filling that up. There's something cool. There's something good about that. Anyway, I was going to tell you, you sound like a wanker if you're not careful. I think when people start critiquing books and start critiquing movies, you're walking a fine line between sounding like a wanker. And so I'm not convinced I'm in any position to break down the structure of books, but I can talk to you about the cover and how much I like them. And so that's one thing that I appreciate. But I like the idea of sitting down with my boy when he's older and just walking him through some classic books, like building his confidence in that area. I'm going to take him through this initiation process from like the age of 13 to 18. And one part of that is going through a whole heap of classic books. Like I bought him I bought him Huckleberry Finn the other day. Check this one. I got him Huckleberry Finn just at an op shop the other day, and he's so pumped. I said, mate, this one's for when you're older. He walks around the house with this book. He's like, he just goes to the one picture on the page. He's like, hey, Dad, when I'm older, we'll read Huckleberry Finn. Okay, buddy. Yeah, you know it. You know we will. And so, like, getting him excited about that. I like the idea of my boy being excited about a good book. And I also like the idea that he can go into a conversation with kids at school and be like, dude, you haven't read Huckleberry Finn? Like, what are you doing? Like, we're 7, man. You should have read Huckleberry Finn by now. But anyway, I mean, you've got to be careful not to turn into a dictator as a parent. Because I'm really interested in helping my kid flourish in areas that I wish I had a little more guidance. I had the best parents, but I mean, you look back and you go, all right, I reckon there could have been a little bit more direction on this particular area or that particular area. And as a result, you take those lessons and you apply it to your kids. Surely that's just like what happens to every single parent. But you've got to be careful not to turn into that dictator, because otherwise you're at the kids' basketball game and the ref starts giving you red cards. Have you ever been to those games? I remember in Justin Wood's dad from Whitford's back in like 1998. He was a passionate dad. I remember one day the umpire walked over to him and gave him the red card, and he's like, no one knows what that means. What happens? He's like, you have to go sit in your car for 5 minutes or something. And so you got to be careful not to turn into that dad. But you want the best, so it's a tight balance. But anyway, let's suss that out. I'm getting back out into the comedy scene tonight here in Geelong, going down, and I'm working on crowd work a little bit. I find that a lot of fun. I've got to keep writing good jokes, but also there's something really fun about getting up in front of an audience and just riffing with them a little bit. I mean, it's not always fun if the conversation doesn't go well and there's not much to riff on. But, I mean, you've always got your jokes to back you up on, hopefully. So that should be fun. But, hey, that's enough from me for today. I hope you guys have a great weekend. And I will be back here again. I reckon we'll have an interview again next week. I've got a couple lined up, couple of real good ones. So that's coming your way. But for now, hey, have a great weekend, and I'll see you all here next week.